In terms of identity, so this is a new work, especially for the DCA, called Self in brackets Symbol. So that relates to the self-portrait paintings. So I've made a few of these, which are three-dimensional versions of fonts. So this and they're all made to my height, and then proportionally to whatever the font is, and they're on a self-important little kind of plinth, you know. So they're sort of memorial to myself in a kind of way. But I quite like them because there's something kind of almost of the lathe, or something centripetal or centrifugal. I don't know what, but it kind of sucks one in, and you move around it, and you don't discover a whole lot more. But so it's a rather implacable symbol of the self. And then there's a piece simply entitled Mark, which I suppose relates to the title of the exhibition, which is Mark Wallinger Mark. And I'm fond of wordplay and puns, you know. But anyway, using my name Mark both as a noun, a verb, a proper name, I spent a summer marking my name Mark in chalk on individual bricks around London, which is a particularly bricky city. So I quite like this sort of low-level graffiti tagging, which described its own making. And then there's a film in like a slide projection every 3 seconds. A different mark appears on screen, but it's always at the centre, at the vanishing point. So there's stuff to do with identity and the self in the show, and then there's things that also are, you know, reach out to a wider world, but are still very much located in my personal experience. So a piece called Orrery, and Orrery is named after the Duke of Orrery, who commissioned the first model of the planets revolving around the sun, and it's known as the New Fairlop Oak, which is named after a very, very famous historic tree. It's planted as part of the Festival of Britain, in fact. So anyway, so it's been there since '51, and so what one has here is spring, summer, autumn, winter, and I got more sophisticated to the extent that I affixed the iPhone to the drive side window with blue tack and drove at a steady, and as I say, somewhere rather niggly 14 miles an hour around. We've edited out some of the abuse around the roundabout, and then managed to kind of sync it all up. You know, in post-production, we only had to kind of gain and lose a few frames to have them all perfectly in sync. So I quite like the fact that this is a sort of film that has a sort of a cosmic kind of element to it, but it's very much a sort of everyday event going around Fulwell Cross roundabout in Barkingside. And then there are a couple of other video works, one called Ever Since, which is just a locked off view of the shop front of a barber shop, outside of which is a revolving barber's pole. I've always loved the barber's pole. I mean, I have a love for illusion, really, which I suppose is rather similar to puns, in that they kind of reveal the workings of our perception, or how we can be fooled, and is seeing believing and all that kind of thing. And so I've always loved this ever ascending kind of illusion of this spiraling red and white sign, and so all we did for this piece was take one revolution of this. Basically, it's 2 seconds animated forever. So it was just one revolution of the barber's pole, which is just repeated. And if you look closely, you can see in the barber's shop there's a second hand on a clock that you can see just jittering back and forth. But I quite like the fact that gives it life and space and realism, even though one then knows it's just it gives it some kind of air or breath or something. And then And the first video piece, if you take a left into the show, is called Construction Site, which is a film in which 3 scaffolders build a structure on the seashore, and it's a square structure. It's a very classic kind of, one's got beach, sea and sky, and the film opens with just the emptiness of that scene, and then the figures arrive, build a structure which the last planks on top align perfectly with the horizon, and the scaffolders briefly become giants on the horizon and then take the whole thing down, and it's on a Sisyphean kind of loop, so they're endlessly building and taking down this thing. But I quite like the idea, because it's actually an hour and 23 minutes long, so it's like a feature-length film in real time of one shot. So yeah, so there's a sort of old hit in the show as well, in the form of time and relative dimensions in space, which is TARDIS is the acronym of that, and that was a piece I made for the Venice, for British Pavilion in Venice in 2001. I suppose it was a piece about my childhood in a sense, and the version I made, it is made with mirror finished stainless steel, so that if you place it equidistant from the walls around it at a certain point, the reflections give it the illusion of it almost disappearing. So I quite liked it. So that's at the point that the whooshing noise happens and it disappears to another place. Yeah. So I'm showing both here at the DCA in Dundee and at the Fruit Market Gallery in Edinburgh. They're linked, but they're kind of also work discreetly in themselves, and so the scale and the beauty of this gallery was perfect for showing a lot of the id paintings, of which I made 66, and there's 12 here. There'll be 4 at the Fruit Market. There's also going to be showing Sleeper, which is a video of my performance in a bear suit in the Neue National Gallery in Berlin from 2004, and yeah, there's other works there related to identity and the self.